The War at Home is a sitcom that aired on Fox from 2005 to 2007. It follows the Gold family as they navigate their day-to-day suburban lives. There are really only 6 characters in this show worth caring about, and 5 of them are the members of the Gold family. There's the patriarch of the household and the show's protagonist Dave, his wife Vicky, their eldest daughter Hillary, their middle and most important child Larry, and their youngest son Mike. But the show's most important character, and the focus of this video, is Larry's best friend Kenny, played by Rami Malek. Unfortunately, this would become the peak of Rami Malek's career, and he would never again achieve this level of mainstream success. Without Kenny, I don't think anyone would have a reason to talk about or even think about this show. At most, we would probably end up seeing it on one of those BuzzFeed listicles of TV shows that didn't age well, if anyone even remembered to include it. But there's something very interesting and kind of strange about the way Kenny's character and story is dealt with throughout the show. What would have been an otherwise offensive and problematic TV series eventually became a surprisingly tasteful depiction of a queer coming-of-age story. And I would know, I watched this show in its entirety all the way back in 2019 because... well, you know what? It doesn't matter. Before we really start to delve into the show proper, let me make something very clear. This show is bad. This show is so bad, I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. It's extremely unfunny, the characters are extremely unlikable for the most part, and the show as a whole feels extremely dated and stale. For example, the pilot episode, and by extension the entire show, starts off with the eldest daughter Hillary bringing home her boyfriend. This boyfriend happens to be black, and Dave, who we're supposed to be rooting for, is extremely upset and opposed to their relationship. This was the first episode of the show. This is what they started with, and it first aired on September 11th. We are off to a bad start. Thankfully though, this is about as bad as the show gets in terms of problematic content. Nah, I'm just messing with you. There is so much casual racism, sexism, homophobia, and transphobia in this show that it's kind of ridiculous. There are so many jokes in The War at Home that would never fly today, and I would argue probably shouldn't have flown then. And look, I'm not trying to cancel anybody. I'm fully aware that the mid-2000s was a different time and a different climate. I'm just saying, it gets pretty bad. The War at Home is formatted just like any other classic multi-camera sitcom, complete with a laugh track. The show will also have confessionals or talking heads in which a character will speak directly to the audience, but instead of sitting at a couch or at a desk, they're standing in a blank white void. It's kind of weird. Season 1, for the most part, is nothing special. It's mostly episodic, with each episode focusing on a specific conflict within the family, hence the title, The War at Home. In episode 3, High Crimes, Dave's weed goes missing and he suspects that Hillary took it. Turns out she did, and Larry then steals it from her.
Oh my god, that's marijuana.
This line has stuck with me for years, and I don't know why. I think it's just the way he says it. In episode 8, The Empire Spanks Back, Dave decides to start spanking his kids as discipline, so Larry decides to move in with Kenny. In episode 17, The 17-Year Itch, Hillary develops a crush on Kenny. This episode also features a cameo from Meghan Markle. This show is crazy. Speaking of Kenny, this video was supposed to be about him, wasn't it? He's introduced in the pilot as Larry's best and really only friend who's constantly complicit in whatever hijinks Larry's got going on. The two characters are very similar in a lot of ways, but it's revealed almost immediately that there's something different about Kenny.
Hey, you want to come over? I just got the new Kelly Clarkson CD.
You're so gay sometimes.
He was just kidding, right? He doesn't know. Does he?
Kenny is gay, and this will eventually become one of the most prominent and meaningful aspects of the entire show. But unfortunately, here in season 1, Kenny is less of a character and more of a walking, talking stereotype. At this point in the show, he really only serves two purposes. He exists for the characters and the writers to make gay jokes at his expense, and in some episodes, he exists to move the plot forward. Not only is Kenny gay, but he has a huge crush on Larry, which at this point is pretty much his defining characteristic. In episode 5, Like a Virgin, Larry gets a girlfriend, and Kenny becomes jealous and tries to break them up. That's really all he gets to do this season, outside of an admittedly entertaining episode where Larry steals a poem Kenny wrote and passes it off as his own.
Our friendship or the poem? What's it gonna be?
The first half of season 2 is much of the same. The episodic storylines really don't get any better. In episode 3, Super Dave, Dave takes Larry and Kenny to a comic book convention. In episode 5, I Wash My Hands of You, Dave catches Vicky smoking. This episode also features a cameo from Seth MacFarlane. This show is crazy. In episode 7, Dave thinks he sees Hillary in a Girls Gone Crazy video, which is obviously the show's version of Girls Gone Wild, and realizes he's been getting off to videos of girls the same age as his daughter, even mistaking one of them for her. I hate this show. My least favorite episode of the entire show has got to be season 2, episode 8, Gaza Strip. This episode is centered around a feud between Dave and Kenny's father Ahmed. This episode is also racist.
I'm gonna make him sorry he ever got on that magic carpet of his and came to the United States in the first place. No offense, Kenny.
Actually, that one's a little bit harder to ignore.
So again, the episode is about a conflict between Dave, who is Jewish, and Ahmed, who is Muslim. And while all of this is going on, Mike decides he wants to start experimenting with nudism. The episode is called Gaza Strip. I hate this show! So by now we're well into season 2, things haven't gotten much better, the show is just as mean-spirited as it ever was, if not worse, and Kenny is still just an excuse for the writers to make gay jokes.
Kenny, come out of the closet right now!
If only it was that easy.
But this is where things start to shift, because now, exactly halfway through season 2, we get the episode that marks a major turning point in the story and is possibly the most important episode in the entire show. Season 2, episode 11, Out and In. For a bit of context, Kenny and Dave have always had kind of a weird dynamic. Actually, it's not that weird, Dave just straight up hates Kenny.
Hey, Kenny.
Hey.
Kenny?
The thing about Dave is that he sucks. He's extremely insensitive and horrible to pretty much everyone. He's a terrible husband and father, and at his worst, he's a creepy, intolerant bigot. Dave has very little tolerance for Kenny and his more flamboyant tendencies, especially since Kenny is best friends with his son. I should also tell you that at this point, Kenny is still in the closet. He hasn't told anyone he's gay except us, the audience. But both Dave and Vicky have suspected that Kenny is gay from day one. And in this episode, Out and In, Dave lets it slip to Larry that he thinks Kenny is gay.
I mean, if Kenny were any gayer, rainbows would be shooting out of his ears, and the village people would play when he walked into a room.
Larry then tells Kenny, who becomes defensive and decides to confront Dave one-on-one.
Who do you think you are?
And I actually really like the dialogue in this scene. Dave is being forced to have a conversation with Kenny that he does not want to have, and he has to navigate a topic that he's clearly uncomfortable with.
So, how do you know if you're gay?
Even though Dave has been nothing but dismissive of him, Kenny feels as though he's the only person he can talk to about this. And here we get my favorite exchange in the whole show.
I don't know, man. It's kind of like an instinct thing. You know, it's like ice cream. You know, you either like chocolate or vanilla. What flavor do you like?
I don't know. Which one's the gay flavor?
First of all, I can easily see something like this happening in real life, or in a Tumblr post from 2015. And second of all, this marks the point where the show completely pivots. Kenny has now outed himself to Dave, and I won't lie, the sheer relief and excitement from Kenny is really heartwarming, and so is Dave's clumsy show of support. He encourages Kenny to tell his parents, which he does, and it doesn't go that well.
Did you talk to your parents like I sensitively suggested?
Yeah, I did.
And what did your father say when you told him?
He said, "Get out of my house, you're dead to me."
His parents effectively disown him and kick him out of the house. Dave and Vicky then decide to informally adopt him. This is a major shift in the status quo of the show. It's the first real example of a plot thread that spans multiple episodes and gradually builds to something bigger. Kenny is now part of the Gould family, which bumps him up from a supporting role to a main role. Subsequent episodes become more and more Kenny-centric. He's not the protagonist, and he still won't be, but he's arguably the heart of the show. Every other member of the Gould family is affected by his coming out and subsequent moving in. Most notably, Dave gradually learns to have a more open mind and becomes a more accepting person through his growing father-son relationship with Kenny.
Oh my God, are you trying to talk to me about safe sex?
Yeah, there's nothing to feel weird about.
This is the most uncomfortable moment of my entire life.
While he's living under the Gould's roof, we see Kenny becoming more comfortable in himself and even beginning to date other boys at his school, and Dave reacts to this the same way he would with any of his other children. He becomes extremely protective of him.
What's going on?
I just threw out some horn dog that was giving my man Kenny here the queer eye.
It's at this point where the war at home begins making a more serious attempt to tackle the issue of homophobia. The jokes are still there, for sure.
I'm not taking him antiquing or buying him a lap dog.
Could you at least stop with the gay jokes?
Whoa, she said what I was thinking! But under all the jokes, the show starts to address the very real and serious conflict Kenny now has to face. In episode 12, Put on a Happy Face, Vicky continually offers to decorate the spare room where Kenny is staying, and he continually refuses.
Honey, I want to.
But I don't want you to.
Why not?
Because I'm not going to be here that long. My parents are going to change their mind. They're going to take me back. Aren't they?
This really broke my heart the first time I watched the show, and it still kind of gets to me. This may come as a shock to you, but Rami Malek is easily the best actor in the show, and he handles these more dramatic moments really well. He also has a real knack for delivering a lot of the jokes in a way that makes them funny.
So were you born in New York?
I don't want to have sex with you!
Man, it's a shame his career never really went anywhere after this. Kenny's storyline culminates in episode 17, Kenny Doesn't Live Here Anymore. There's a Sadie Hawkins dance coming up at school, and Kenny and his boyfriend aren't allowed to go because no girls have asked them. Dave decides to take matters into his own hands and complains to the principal. When the principal asks why Dave is sticking up for Kenny and not Kenny's father, the truth comes out and social services show up at the house. And the stakes become insanely high out of nowhere. Unless Kenny's parents sign legal guardianship over to the Goulds, which they won't, Kenny will have to be put in foster care. So Dave now has to convince Kenny's parents to take him back in. And eventually, it works. There are a few more episodes after that, but who cares really? Kenny isn't seen again until episode 22, the series finale. There's no mention of his parents or his home life. We may as well be back in season 1. In terms of Kenny's story, the show pretty much ends with Kenny doesn't live here anymore. I can't help but feel as though this conclusion was a bit rushed. Kenny's parents took him back at the end of episode 17, but things were still very clearly tense between the three, and it's weird that the show acts like everything is immediately fixed, especially since they place so much emphasis on just how hurt Kenny was by the way his parents treated him. But overall, I'm extremely impressed by the way the war at home ends up treating Kenny. There is so much offensive garbage in this show, which makes it all the more baffling and remarkable when the show decides to lock in for seemingly no reason and treat these concepts with the respect they deserve. It's not perfect, it's not even great, but it's so much more heartfelt and genuine than what you would expect given the rest of the show. The two episodes that deal most directly with Kenny's sexuality, Out and In and Kenny Doesn't Live Here Anymore, even end with a message from the actors, including Rami Malek, encouraging queer viewers to embrace their identity and to call the Trevor Project's hotline if they ever need help or counseling.
Don't let anyone make you feel ashamed. The Trevor Project runs the only nationwide around-the-clock helpline for gay and questioning youth.
Trained counselors offer hope and someone to talk to without judgment.
Be proud of who you are. Call 1-866-4U-TREVOR or visit thetrevorproject.org.
The Trevor Project, saving young lives.
I'm not going to pretend that The War at Home was the only show on TV in the mid-2000s to feature queer characters and stories in this way. Will and Grace had already been on for almost a decade when The War at Home started airing. But it's just so interesting to me that the show went from making jokes at the expense of literally every minority you could think of, especially gay men, to featuring a coming out storyline that eventually became the focus of the show and was executed in a shockingly compassionate way. It was even nominated for a GLAAD award. I wouldn't say that The War at Home has a special place in my heart, but honestly, Kenny does. I know he's stereotypical and he's not the most fleshed out character, but I love him regardless. I think about him all the time. Like I said, I watched The War at Home years ago, and it's kind of been eating away at me ever since, and I just had to tell you about it. Now that I'm done, I am more than happy to let it fade back into relative obscurity. I totally understand why nobody talks about it these days. I mean, it's not like any of these cast members eventually became a mainstream celebrity or anything. Before I go, I want to be able to provide you with resources that you may need, just like The War at Home did. I've provided a link in the description to the Trevor Project, as well as ways to help Palestinian citizens in Gaza. Please take a look at these resources, spread awareness, and donate if you are able to do so. It's very, very important. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and if you liked me, be sure to subscribe to my channel. If you want, you can even turn notifications on so you'll be the first to know the next time I'm wishing you a happy Pride Month. Yay! Anyways, that's going to be all from me. I'm going to go watch a better show. Bye!